الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله.
But people are confused. Let me tell you a story from a flight. I was traveling and a gentleman came and sat with me. It's not backbiting. Who knows what the situation was? And it's not even about backbiting. He just had a viewpoint. He came to me on the plane asking his companion for permission, saying, "Brother, I want to sit with Mufti Sahab." He explained that I shouldn't tell the entire story in great detail just in case his family members might recognize themselves and realize I was speaking about them. So for that reason, I will slightly modify the specific details of the story just enough so the identity remains hidden and it is not completely obvious. He said to me quite clearly, "Look, I already have 3 daughters at home, but now I have reached a point where I really want to have a son." Now that I want a son, I was considering that popular medical procedure. I'm sure you know exactly the thing I'm talking about. The procedure where you can actually select the gender through the test tube baby process. It has a very specific technical name for it, which is IVF. Whenever a pregnancy is successfully established through the test tube baby process, it becomes scientifically possible for the parents to select the gender beforehand, which simply means choosing whether the baby will be a boy or a girl. So he told me, since we already have 3 daughters and I truly desire a son, we have finally decided, mind you, they were a highly educated family, very learned people. So we decided together that we really should try to conceive through the modern test tube baby process so we can specifically select a boy. However, Mufti Sahab, deep down in my heart, I still feel there's a slight doubt. I don't know if this is even permissible or not. Because he was a Muslim, had he been a non-Muslim, would he even ask? I'm not just asking this. Had he been a non-Muslim, he wouldn't even have stopped at 3 daughters or come to me. Being a believer, he approached me and explained that he wanted to do this specifically to... I told him clearly that this isn't permissible in Islam. You should tell people that gender selection through such methods is simply not allowed for us. I said that whatever happens naturally in life, whether you have a boy or a girl, you must leave that decision entirely to whom? You must leave it to Allah. Since he seemed like a very well-educated man to me, I said, let me explain exactly where this trouble begins to emerge. Those 3 or 4 daughters that you currently have were born into this world because you were constantly searching for a son. They were all born out of your greed for a son. Otherwise, if you had gotten what you wanted, you wouldn't have even allowed a second girl to be born. Am I correct in saying this? He looked at me and replied, yes, you are absolutely correct in that assessment. Nobody wants more than 2 children in this day and age, do they? I said the real problem begins right here. Your initial plan was likely that you would have 1 son and 1 daughter, and then you would consider your family perfectly complete for life. You thought your family would be complete and you would just stop right there and put on the brakes. However, nature did not care for that specific desire of yours at all, nor did it take your personal preferences into account during that time. Nature ignored your wish and instead chose to give you a daughter. You took a chance on another try and then yet another girl arrived. Oh, a daughter. You probably weren't happy. In fact, you likely felt like crying, thinking that you only had 2 chances. You wanted 1 son and 1 daughter, but that chance was completely missed. You must have been under so much stress because of it, and the resulting depression was a completely separate burden for you. Then you said to yourself, let's take just 1 more chance, but then you had another daughter and now you find yourself in a real state of trouble. So I told him that this entire problem and this fundamental mistake actually starts right here. Religion has already decreed how many sons, how many daughters, and exactly how many children you will have. This is not your choice to make. You must leave this matter entirely in the hands of Allah. Your intention will be, I won't be able to raise them properly. Then he told me, no Mufti Sahab, I really don't agree with you on this specific point. Actually, look at how things are. Now just look at how human intellect is being used to justify things in this modern day. Thinking yourself too smart in unnecessary places using human intellect where religion has already set firm limits and trying to force your own logic into divine matters. He said, look, actually it's not like we should just keep having kids like monsoon frogs populating a pond. Look, we need to consider the focus of upbringing. Who should we really focus on? Upbringing. Now you look at the poverty in society. A total lack of resources. Who will raise so many children? I said, friend, please, there's absolutely no lack of resources here. You're traveling by plane, right? Not a donkey cart. What do you think of that? You're sitting comfortably in a plane. If a poor street vendor or a tomato seller had said this, it would at least make some sense. Then I presented various detailed reports to him from international experts, from foreign experts showing that global resources aren't decreasing relative to the population but are actually increasing. I explained it all very politely, debated the point, and finally made him understand the reality. I told him that the lack of resources only truly becomes a problem when a person is born without 2 hands and 2 feet to work with. I said, brother, as long as a person is born with the capacity to contribute, it's fine. Every single child is born with 2 hands. You're also someone's child, aren't you? Were you ever a burden to your father? You studied and now you earn. All children have the natural potential to earn as well. A daughter's provision eventually becomes the duty of her in-laws and her husband, while a man will always find a way to earn and provide for himself. I sat them down for a full hour to explain the reality of the situation. I said, look at the immense harm this modern two-child policy is causing to society. It creates an imbalance that people don't realize until it is far too late. Whoever has 2 children and gets a son will stop reproducing immediately. However, those who don't get a son will keep going until they get one. Don't you think that is exactly what will happen in society? So the natural growth ratio between boys and girls that should exist will be completely disrupted, won't it? Tell me, brother, am I not right about this potential social disaster? They said, certainly. I said, this will destroy the next generation. It will create major problems for girls. Then they claim that China and India also have 2-child policies in place. I told them that a great injustice is happening there. When one lie is told, 100 more must usually be told. Must be told simply to cover up the first one. The reason there is currently such a much higher ratio of men in China's 2-child policy is because of a dark reality, that baby girls are tragically killed within the mother's womb. On the day of judgment, all these innocent girls will grab those people by their collars and confront them for justice. This verse, and when the girl child buried alive is asked for what sin she was killed, the Quran says on the day the girl buried alive will be asked, tell for what crime were you killed. In the commentary of this verse, scholars have written that those girls are also included who were aborted in the mother's womb, because once the pregnancy is fully complete, once it is known whether it's a boy or a girl, then this abortion process happens. Life has already entered that child, and so it should be considered as nothing less than a proper murder. I've had calls from mothers saying they went to the hospital, found out it's a girl, so they said abort it. They say when aborted, that girl's life left her in the womb. The child struggled. That mother had the fear of Allah and became terrified, asking, what have I done? I killed my own girl. Now she is crying and constantly asking herself, oh Allah, what have I actually done? I killed my own girl. Millions of girls in China and India have been murdered in the mother's womb. It was only through this horrific practice that they were able to control the growth ratio and implement their strict population policies. Perhaps you don't understand the gravity of this. In the dark age of ignorance, there were those fathers who buried their innocent daughters alive in the sand. This was the same level of cruelty that existed. Was any legal case ever filed against them in this world? Why not? Usually the one to file a case would be the father, but when the father is the one doing the killing, who will file it? So similarly, my brother, these unborn girls, they never entered the world to file a case against their parents. No law exists in the human world to hear their silent pleas. So what do you think? Do you really believe that Allah will just let it go? Is it on the basis that they were your children to do as you please? If Allah was to let go, why would He tell the pagans He'd seize them for killing their own children? So I said, for this very reason, my brother, I decided to give my own personal example to him. I said that according to the reports so far, I have 19 children of my own in my family. The number which could change at any given time, there are 19 of them. I told him I am not saying this to show off or act superior, and I pray that Allah protect my family from the effects of the evil eye. Allah has veiled our many flaws. We aren't actually that pious. I asked them, do I look happy and content to you or not? They replied, MashaAllah, you look perfectly fine and great. So I said, we have 19 children, please come and meet them. Alhamdulillah, according to our report so far, not one of them is a thief, nor do they steal slippers from the mosque. They are all studying, attending madrasas and schools. It is all quite normal. I said they aren't exactly perfect angels, but none of them have gone astray yet. This whole upbringing gimmick that you guys try to sell, the more kids there are, the more they handle each other. In our case, our elder brothers raised us, yes. Dad was always at the office. We got slapped by our elder brothers, which is why today we've turned out to be somewhat decent humans. Because the new generation understands the new generation best. Fathers get old. However, a brother knows all the mischief of the younger ones and exactly where they are likely to go wrong. Then there are daughters who have no brothers. Those daughters face abuse at their in-laws. Many such cases arise. A woman said her in-laws abuse her because her brother's paternal uncles don't even exist anymore. The grandfather had maybe only one child, so there's just one aunt living in Landhi. What can that poor aunt possibly do all alone? When there is a large family, let's see if someone dares to mistreat this girl. There are 8 to 10 brothers standing behind her, along with all the uncles. So I continued to argue my point with them, but the person did not budge at all from his position. Now, why do you think he didn't budge? It is because once a person is set in their modern logic, it is very hard to shift them. Brother, it is because explaining these things through human logic alone is very hard. In these matters, you just have to surrender your own intellect before the wisdom of Allah and lay down your logical weapons. We surrendered long ago. We said forget about it and let it go. Once Allah has given a command, that is the end of it. If a trial ever comes through children, God forbid, we will say, Allah, we followed your command. That was it. If there's a trial, Allah will also grant patience. Sometimes one tries to do good and a trial comes, then he says, brother, I did everything right. If you get treated by a proper doctor and the medicine is correct, yet it still causes a reaction, You won't feel regret because you did your absolute best by going to a reputable and experienced doctor for your treatment. He even researched every single medicine on YouTube, yet if a reaction occurs, that is in Allah's hands. But if you are knowingly taking poison, you have no one to blame. If you are walking on the wrong track, you will inevitably get nothing but depression for your efforts. So I said, brother, if gender selection were allowed for everyone in the world today, then the natural growth ratio would be totally ruined. One person would want a boy today, and another would say, I want 6 boys, only boys and no girls at all. The same fate awaits us as in China and India, where men outnumber women. I've heard that in China, wars are about to break out over women. But then what happens? When they can't find women, they start heading in that direction instead. Then they will inevitably go down the wrong path and get habituated to it. Yet Allah has made the right path so easy for us to follow. Allah said clearly, brother, do not fear. Even if you do not have a single rupee left in your pocket, you are still not allowed to stop the lineage. For we will provide for you and for all of them as well. This is His divine promise to us. They told me that we should use our own intellect. I said we certainly should use it, but never against God. For true reason says that God's wisdom is always going to be far greater than our own limited human intellect. And I said if you use your intellect correctly, the milk appearing in the mother's breasts as soon as a child is born is a clear sign from nature that Allah is not negligent in His creation. Allah has created a perfect system. Once the child is born, the milk comes, it won't come without the birth. Now you might look and say, look at him, he has so many kids to support. His mother's milk kept coming. If the milk hasn't even arrived yet, how can I have children? It comes once the child is born, right? So when the child is born, then Allah will grant you the financial means to cover the expenses. If not, you'll just keep wandering. Like some of my single classmates who kept saying they had no money and still don't. Others got married, had children who grew up and had their own kids, lived well, and finally passed away. Yet according to all the reports we have so far, those bachelors still have nothing to show. It is not just about money. It is Allah's immense blessing, my brother, that He gave us the light of Islam. Our confusion in many things has finally been cleared up. In dozens of matters has been removed by Allah. When the command of Allah and His messenger arrives, brother, Allah knows best. Just as a doctor is knowledgeable while we are not. So whatever the doctor prescribes, will you research if you should take this Panadol or not? Since a good doctor gave it, he just takes it with conviction. So who could we trust more than Allah? That is why we are at peace, but non-believers are not. They are stumbling in distress. That is why the Quran says they wander lost in valleys, never knowing what is right or wrong. To summarize and wrap up my talk today, it turns out that Allah has nothing directly to do with our physical bodies or appearances. He is far more concerned with what lies deep within our hearts and minds. Allah looks at our internal knowledge and our outward deeds. And that verse I recited, guide us to the straight path, implies that while some people possess vast knowledge, they may not act upon it, but do not act upon it. Regarding the Jews, Allah said not to lead us on their path either. Do not follow their path. The true path requires correct knowledge accompanied by corresponding actions. May Allah grant us the understanding and the ability